Hello, everybody, and welcome to another exciting episode of Brown Bagging It. All right, I'm one of the three hosts. I'm Marty Jalove, and we've got a very, very exciting episode today. How often have you thought about leaving your job? How often have you had to interview somebody to join your team? This has always been a very difficult thing for me to wrap my head around sometimes, wondering if I'm asking the right questions, if I'm giving the right answers. So we decided to bring in one of the greatest experts, one of the top guys in interviewing. We want to talk about how to be a great interviewer, how to be a great interviewee, but more importantly, to discuss the pros and cons of running interviews online. So before we get into that, I want to bring out my other co-host, that is CJ Powers, and of course, the ever popular Christine Crow. Come on out here, guys. Hello, hello.
Yeah, I don't think popular is the right word.
Oh, yes, yes. Come on. Everyone loves Christine.
Just a little teasing.
The whole reason we're on the show is just to meet Christine.
Well, that's true. She is fun. You are fun, Christine.
There you go.
You're fun.
There you go. So Brown Bagging It, like we said, is all about learning leadership, communication styles, becoming the best we can be during this 1 hour, this 45 minutes or 1 hour during lunch, so we get a chance to eat something. So CJ, Christine, what did you bring in your brown bag today?
Well, I am. That was a pretty sly trick on CJ's behalf. He's like, I'm going to put Christine on screen. So I was thinking about this, and like, if you are ever the interviewer or the interviewee, it's always good to start things off right with them. And so if you have chocolates to share with friends, that's always the way to go. So today I brought my chocolates to share with friends. So here you go, guys.
That's awesome. Thank you. Thank you. I'm going to have to stop by and grab one. What about you, CJ? Did you bring anything for lunch today?
You know what? I had a bottle. Unfortunately, it's across the room. I forgot to grab it. And it has...
Wow, drinking at lunchtime, huh, CJ? It's a little early.
It has a cork on it. And inside the bottle is a unique prize. And the key is to use this bottle to test an interviewee to find out what kind of creative thoughts they have. The rule is you can't break the bottle and you cannot pull out the cork, but you have to remove the gift. That's the key. And yes, it is doable.
Yeah, I'm sure that it is. All right, excellent. Well, I view this as, I'm taking it the next step. I love the whole interviewing process. And since we're doing it online, what I did was I brought a virtual brown bag lunch today. It's not as good as the actual one, but you know what? We're going virtual today.
Are you going to virtually eat it for us?
There you go. There we go. I might eat it later. So rather than us keep talking, let me ask you, what was some of the most interesting interviews you've been involved in, CJ, whether you were the person interviewing or the interviewee?
Yeah, well, I think the most eye-opening one for me was when they started asking questions to see if I'd be a fit. And my answers showed that I was too good of a fit, and they got nervous. They thought, oh my gosh, this guy actually knows what he's talking about. He won't be pliable. He'll want to do things the right way instead of our way. And that was an eye-opener to me. I realized that you can't always get a job by being truthful. Sometimes you have to hold back information.
Oh, that's interesting. I'm very interested to hear our guests' take on that. What about you, Christine? What about any interesting stories about interviewing or being interviewed?
Well, a couple things. I want to point out that I think that for myself, for a long time, for sure, I thought of interviewing and being an interviewer only associated with a job. But in actuality, we are all interviewers and interviewees, because if you want to bring somebody on to help with your finances, a tax person, a mortgage person.
Okay.
And just a disclaimer today, Xfinity and other companies are changing over to 5G today, so there might be some blankouts happening.
Every now and then, but that's all right. You know what? During an interview, whether you're the interviewer or interviewee, we have to roll with the flow, right?
That's right. But I like Christine's point. I like what she was saying. because we tend to interview babysitters and teachers, and we interview
Yes.
people all the time, and sometimes we're just not even cognizant of the fact that maybe there's a way to interview them that reveals more, and maybe we're taking things too far. I don't know. What are your thoughts?
That could be. You know what? I'm going to jump right into this. I want to bring out our guest because we can all talk a little bit about this, but I want to bring out somebody who's an expert in this. So without further ado, I want to introduce our guest for today. Iqbal Atcha is the CEO and principal consultant at Atcha International Consulting. He helps professionals and executives in the healthcare space advance their career, build a better brand, and create a lasting legacy. Now, I've known Iqbal for quite a long time. He's got over 25 years extensive experience in human resource. So he's probably seen a lot of the right things to do and the wrong things to do and push people in the right direction. He has helped some people and helped hire people for Fortune 500 companies, including Walmart and Anthem. He has done so much. He has got a master's degree in business administration. He is a pharmacist, and his specialty is helping people learn how to get hired in the healthcare industry. Now, I strongly encourage everyone to go to his site, atchainternational.com, and also follow his podcast, which is Healthcare and Hire, a podcast all about the healthcare industry and how you can do the absolute best in that healthcare industry, whether going for that next position, jumping in from the beginning. But he is a person you really want to talk to when you need to beef up your resume a little bit and just kind of improve, maybe practice your interviewing skills. So with that, I would like to introduce Iqbal. I am so sorry. Iqbal Atcha. I am sorry, Iqbal.
Perfect. Yay.
Let's see how many times we can
Marty.
slaughter the name.
Remember, it's just like Iqbal without that first K.
There you go. There you go. So thank you so much for joining us here today. All right.
Oh, it's a pleasure. I'm excited. I'm really wishing Christine could give me one of those chocolates like right through the screen, but it's good to be with you guys as well. Thanks so much for having me.
There you go. So do you have chocolate on your desk while you're interviewing?
Well, sometimes it's chocolate, sometimes it's ice cream, but because it's a virtual world today, you may even find a turkey like somewhere on this desk. But yes, I do.
Nice.
I do try to keep some sort of sugar ready in case my sugar goes low or the candidates. Just depends.
Nice. I like that. I like that. So I gotta ask the first question right off the bat. Is we have slowly, and in some ways quickly, turned into a virtual world. And so what is the biggest pro or con to interviewing online versus the face-to-face? What would you say?
Yeah, I think, the biggest con in this new world that we're living in today is that all of those subtle cues that you would naturally pick up from either body movement or discomfort, overconfidence, like those things kind of get lost. We talk about the camera adding 10 pounds, but we also know that the camera removes a lot of the human element, the social feel that comes from being in a room with a person, especially an interviewer. So one of the things that I advise my clients over and over again is to overemphasize the energy level and the pronunciation of words. I'll give you a great example. Every time I'm with a client, when I ask them a question and we do mock interviews, I always encourage them like, hey, you're going to start off at a high, but you need to make sure that you kind of stay within this energy level range. And it's much higher than what you would expect in a one-to-one conversation in real life. And simply it's because the camera just removes some of that energy and you're suddenly left trying to clue and put the pieces together as an interviewer after the fact. So that's one of the biggest cons that we face today. Probably the biggest pro, you are now enabled and empowered to be able to surround yourself with resources at your fingertips to be able to answer questions that you may not naturally have. So think of it this way. If an interviewer were to ask you a pretty tough question or something that you were just not expecting, you might end up looking through your padfolio and going through your notes to say, well, hang on for 1 second. In a virtual world, I tell my clients, like, have post-its all over your screen.
Yeah.
If you have attachments that you can put there, and these aren't like, long drawn out stories. They're just little reminders for yourself that if you glance to the side, you may suddenly see something in your periphery that goes, oh yeah, that's a great story. I need to talk about that. And so it's a great way for interviewees to have those things available without feeling like it's, forced or very awkward.
I like the concept of having little reminders because a person like me, I can go off on any direction depending on just hearing a certain word or a certain phrase. So if I have a visual reminder, all the more important. And one of the things I was curious about when it comes time for stories, because people seem to remember you more if you have a great story, does it always need to be something that shows that your great accomplishment? Or can it be more personal or touching at the same time?
That's a really good question, CJ. Here's what I tell my clients, and this is, I think, very important because when you walk into an interview, remember, you're trying to compress 5, 10, 20 years of life experience, professional life experience, into this 5-minute response to any interview. And the fact of the matter is that if all you do is come across as this, mission driven or data driven individual, you're going to come across pretty cut and dry and pretty boring. And so it is
Sure.
important to try to add a little bit of flavor. Now, the balance between professional advancements and professional achievements versus personal life, I think it's kind of a very delicate balance to walk. What I do feel is more valuable is for interviewees to understand that walking into an interview means having several stories, but in different camps. So the 3 camps that I encourage my clients and individuals to really be focused on are a couple of stories in the success category, things that you did, that you took a project from here to here, you helped a department clinch a sale or anything of that nature. But you also need to balance that with stories of failure, things that you thought you were going to be able to knock it out of the park, but guess what? You did not. You actually tried your absolute best, but you failed at it. And the valuable lessons that came out of that empowered you, strengthened you, and really just made you a better leader or a better employee the next time around. And then the third camp is what I tell is very important. And this is probably where it goes and speaks directly to what you were talking about, CJ,
Mhm.
is the stories of impact. Things, experiences, events that you had a finger on or a touch with that changed the lives of others. And, it could be as simple as a new hire that was lost walking around campus, or it could be somebody that you tried to mentor and develop. And in my case, I ended up learning that individual was not just ready to quit his job. This person was ready to quit life.
Ooh.
And my simple conversation
Wow.
with that person changed that person's life. So, those are the types of stories I encourage people to really think about. You don't have to be a winner at everything. You just have to be a good storyteller in success, failure, and impact.
That's
There you go.
great.
I like that a lot.
Yeah.
Now, um, my biggest fear with this is we can, the 3 of us and Christine could fill a couple hours with stories. It's the finding the appropriate stories, the ones that impact the outcome of the interview. So how much of a blend of questions and answers do I go? How many questions am I really allowed? How inquisitive can I be in order to find the right stories to deliver? Is there some
Yeah.
type of a
So
balance or a rule of thumb?
There kind of is, and it really depends on the level of interview. It depends on who you're interviewing with, and it depends on the kind of position you're going for, right? So if this is an entry level position, very likely you will have 2 or 3 interviews. It'll be with the hiring manager, a peer, and then also potentially one of your hiring manager's peers, just to see if you have a cultural fit, and if you have enough acumen to be able to do the job well. If you're moving into a director level role or higher, you can expect 6, 7 interviews, just depending upon the company's protocols and culture. But when it comes to your responses and the questions that you will need to be prepared for, typically an interview is either 30, somewhere between 30 and 45 minutes. And what's really critical to understand is that the hiring manager is not just interviewing you. He's probably, or she probably has a series of interviews lined up back to back. And that why is that important is because if you think that you're going to be able to go from 45 minutes to an hour and 15 because you have such a beautiful story to tell, please don't do that. You're going to be hurting your chances. The concept is respond in a short amount of time to give as much value and on point as much as you can. In my experience, what I see is that hiring managers and interviewers really at best have the ability to ask you 5 questions. Like that's kind of the max that they're going to be able to stretch out. It's not uncommon to see them ask 4 questions and then leave time for you to ask them questions back. Now, Marty, you would ask, how many questions can I ask? Like, really, is there a rule of thumb? Yeah, there kind of is. And it really is interesting because if you ask 2 questions, that's really the norm. If you're lucky, you'll be able to ask a third. And why that's important is because you want to be able to show that you've done your research into the organization or what the company does or what your particular department of interest does. But you also want to make sure that you're adding, enough stress on the interviewer that makes them think, this person really does have a handle on what we are about. And the more important part is don't ask the same question of every interviewer. So if you're going through a series of interviews, make sure that you mix up the questions. I promise you this, that at the end of every interview, every interviewer or every interview panelist says, hey, so what did you think of Iqbal? And then they have a deep dive conversation. And if they see that you're asking each of them the same exact questions, that doesn't bode well for your candidacy.
That's a really good point.
So there's this tendency out in the marketplace, and I know it's not supposed to happen, but the tendency is for people to ask interview questions that can kind of hint or find out or search for what the person's previous income level was. How should a interviewee, is that the right direction, need to deal with that?
Yeah, great question. And what's interesting is that has become such a sticking point, not just from a candidate experience perspective, but it's also become a legal matter. In fact, many states now prohibit employers from asking what your previous salary is, but employers have learned how to be able to ask what your salary expectations are. So if a candidate either applies for a role and they're selected for an interview, one of the questions that will pop up is, so what are your expectations for a salary at this level? The thing that I tell my candidates is this, or my clients is that, you want to be able to understand what your ideal figure is. And then you also want to be able to express what your basement acceptable level is. And what I tell clients is this: if you're going to have to answer the question, try and be as professional as you can, and by soliciting information back. So first ask to say, that's a really great question. I'm glad you asked. Based on my experiences, based on my research and due diligence, I have a feeling I understand what the market rate is for my position. I'm curious to know, is there a salary range that your company offers for these types of roles?
Sure.
Put the question right back to them. See what they say. Very likely they're not going to respond. They're going to say, well, it just depends on a variety of factors. But what are you looking for? If you get to the second volley of this type of questioning, you want to be able to provide for them a very large range, something that it's not going to be in the $10,000 difference, right? So for example, if you're going for a director level role, you want to be able to say something like, in my market, for the industry that I support and for the scope of responsibility, I would say somewhere like, this to that with a $50,000 spread. So you can say 100 to 150,000, 130 to 180,000. They can't knock you out because you've given that large of a range. They may ask you, can you be more specific? And says, well, I'd be happy to do that at the next level of interview. And now you've positioned yourself in a way where you've not only been able to not get knocked out of the running, but you've also positioned yourself to be able to have a better conversation with the person who will be signing your checks.
That's great.
Excellent.
I love it.
Excellent. Thank you. That's so well done. So we're going to take a small break so you can take a look at a whole different interviewing process. And Iqbal, hang out and make sure that you give us some feedback on what you think of this upcoming little video. So the CIA was looking to hire a new agent. They had narrowed it down to 3 choices, 3 women. And they were very excited about this. And the last part of the interviewing process was a special task that these women had to perform via an online interviewing process. So each of them were delivered a package that they received at 3 in the morning. And the note said, sign on to this online interview. Once they signed on, they were able to talk to the interviewer. The first woman was in her mid-20s, newly married, and she had scored very high on both the physical and the psychological exam. The CIA was very excited about her. They thought that this was the winner. This is the one that they wanted. She opened the package, and inside was a gun. The interviewer said, all right, your last task to prove your loyalty to the CIA is we need you to take that gun, go into the bedroom, and shoot your husband. This, without a doubt, would prove that you are loyal to the CIA. The woman looked at it, took a deep breath, looked into the screen, walked off the screen. In the meantime, one of the other interviewers said, what? You're going to have her shoot her husband? And he said, no. The gun is filled with blanks. This is just to test her loyalty. A moment later, the woman came back on screen and said, I am so sorry. I love the idea of joining the CIA, but I cannot shoot my husband. I am sorry. And the interviewer said, I understand completely, and I hope you understand that we're going to have to take a pass on you. We're going to move to another candidate. Now they moved to the second candidate. This woman was in her mid-30s. She had just celebrated her 10-year wedding anniversary. She opened the box, the same thing, there was a gun inside. And they said, to prove your loyalty to the CIA, we want you to take this gun, go into the bedroom, and shoot your husband. The woman looked at the gun, picked it up, walked off screen. A moment later, came back, and I said, I am so sorry. I am so sorry. As much as I'd love to be part of the CIA, I can't do this. I love my husband. And the interviewer said, I understand completely. No problem. We truly understand. But I hope you understand we have to move to our third candidate. So the third candidate was a woman in her late 40s. And the interviewer said, look, I'm going to be completely honest with you. We don't normally hire somebody at your age. You didn't do very well on the physical. You didn't do very well on the psychological test. But we still would like you to finalize and finish the interviewing process. And then we can consider you. The woman said, okay, I'm eager to do so. She opened the box and there was the gun. And he said the same thing. What we need you to do, and I know you've been married to this man for over 20 years. What we need you to do is take that gun out, walk into that bedroom and shoot your husband. That will prove to us that you are loyal to the CIA. The woman looked at the gun, took this deep breath, walked in the room. Silence for a while. Then all of a sudden we heard click, 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 click. Boom, 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 crash, boom, boom, boom. All this racket. She came walking back in. Oh. The interviewer was like, what happened? And she said, I don't know. Some idiot put blanks in the gun. I had to beat my husband to death with a chair.
I did not know it was going to go that direction at all.
Yeah, I was trying to figure that too.
Oh boy, I'm going to let you guys dive back into the questions.
Thanks.
I'm afraid now because my wife wanted to join the CIA at one point, so I don't know.
But it does lead to this question of these odd interviewing styles. More and more interviewers start asking these questions or having people do tasks or do something to prove that they can actually do this, to see what their critical thinking is like. What's your thoughts on that, just in general?
Yeah, so there's actually like two kinds of two types of these kinds of questions that are coming up, right? There are some questions that are just off the wall, just to see how you manage stress, how you're able to think on your feet, think outside the box. How many ridges are there on the side of a quarter? Or things of that nature, where that has no relevancy at all towards the position you're applying to, but they're doing that to see, if you can think on your feet. But there's also been a new trend now where they are asking candidates to literally prepare presentations, documentation, projects, and workforce planning to be able to move to the next level. And I think that I'm giving that these two examples to show that there is a distinction between how far a candidate should go in the process of applying. So if you're just asked a stressful question, do your best. Try to think about, talk out the logic behind your reasoning and your critical thinking skills. But if they're asking you to, spend 48 hours to recreate a project and, laminate it and then present it to 4 people so that they can review it, I mean, that's a little bit extensive in my book, and I would be very cautious because that's proprietary information. And the number of cases that we're hearing from Fortune 500, Fortune 1000 companies that are asking of this, it is growing. So, for me, that's where I draw the hard line. Like, no, I'm not willing to give up my intellect for this, for an opportunity to work for you.
Right.
That's a different story.
As an engineer, I've been asked questions like that, on the spot calculations. They'll throw something at you and ask. And I don't, in those situations, do you think that that's proprietary too? Because that's just kind of seeing your problem solving technique.
Yeah, no, I would say that that's acceptable, right? Like for a lot of the clients that I've had that are coders and programmers, they may be given a quick task to say, like, hey, quickly create this project, or quickly create code, or find the bug in this. Like, that's fine, because what you're doing is testing the level of acumen and expertise of the reason why you're hiring that person. But when we think about a 48 or 72-hour investment to create a business plan for a potential project. No, I mean, I think that testing the skill sets of a professional that's certified or has gone through a training program to be able to say, like, hey, how well do you know this material? That's perfectly legitimate. And I would be actually in favor of that. But beyond that, I mean, some of the crazy things that are happening out there, you got to know your litmus. You have to have a litmus test for yourself.
Yeah. Well, I kind of like some of the direction it goes in, because I'm sure all of us have hired somebody who made promises, or we made some assumptions about them. And then once they were hired, we realized maybe they really can't live up to everything that they said. So I'm kind of in favor of some of that. And I like the idea of putting a little stress on the person to see how they can handle stress. But how much do you have to also help them feel de-stressed? In other words, so you can get the real person out of them, because they're not going to be working 100% under stress. I would hope not. So how do you get them to calm down during the interviewing process?
Sure. For me, whenever I've been on the other side of this desk and interviewing people, one of the things I always try to do is I always try to listen more, and then I tap into a statement, a phrase, or something that I could tell was a little bit more personal to them. And most of the time, whenever you're asking these very structured HR approved questions, like, it's very, very rhythmic. Hey, tell me about a time when you've done this, or tell me, how would you manage such and such situation? But the reality of it is that as an interviewer, you want that person to feel that there's some synergy between who they are, their skills, their strengths, their values, and their passions, and then align it with the company that they're interviewing with. So typically, when I would ask a question of a candidate, I says, what is it that attracted you most to work for our company, or even apply? And my hope is that they've done enough research either on our company page, or by conversations on LinkedIn, or reaching out to maybe somebody within our mutual network to understand that, hey, there's some things that we do that really mean something to you. So, for example, if you're in the market for a new opportunity and you're looking and researching companies, always go to a company's corporate social page. A lot of companies will invest time either supporting organizations that are veteran friendly, or that they give back to the community because of a focus on homeless. Either homeless populations, or maybe just giving back to a sustainable environment. For me, those things are very important to me. So when I hear you say that back to me, it makes me understand, like, hey, we're really proud of the fact that we just invested $1 billion to support a women's shelter group in the west side of Chicago. Like that's something that makes me recognize, like, hey, you know who we are, and we really want somebody that sees that and will promote those types of values as well if we hire you.
So I love that. And right along those lines, when let's flip the script, like we're the interviewer, we're the person interviewing, assuming that the person that we're interviewing has the skills that we already want. A lot of times working and having someone work with you, especially when you're a smaller company, really comes down to if you can connect and work with that person. Is there any sort of questions that you use that kind of help to delve in or help that come out a little bit quicker?
Yeah, and so it's really interesting that way that you asked that, Christine, because one of the things that I see is, there has to be a series of conversations and a series of interviews with different people for a composite picture to be created. In reality, as the hiring manager, I will be looking at this candidate through a certain lens versus a peer who will be looking at that candidate through a certain lens versus, a senior vice president or somebody in a different capacity. One of the things that I would tell you, however, is that, when you are trying to get to the root of a person's intent, why they are applying, why they're interested in this role, what you're really looking for are past experiences and past successes that tend to lead that person to understand, here is what this is the reason why you wake up in the morning. It wouldn't matter if you were working for Mondelez, or if you were working for Nabisco, if you were working for Walmart, if you were working for a healthcare company. It doesn't matter what organization or industry. This is the reason why you wake up. And if we can tap into that as a collective group of
Yeah.
interviewers, and we recognize this is the environment that we need to make sure is available and sustainable for you to do your best work, then we feel that you'll be a good fit too. So I think that that's really the intent of how interviewers try to piece together that puzzle.
Perfect. Perfect. Iqbal, one last question I've got for you is this idea before we put so much emphasis on my ability to do the job, maybe my IQ, and then it turned into more of the EQ, the emotional quotient. And now it seems like we're putting a lot more emphasis on adaptability. So is there kind of a balance that you look at with people with the intelligence, the ability to already do the job, their emotional state, as well as their adaptability? Is there something there, series of questions, or a balance that you're looking for across the board there?
Yeah, there certainly is. And I would tell you that, the ability to not just adapt, but to lead change is very crucial today. I mean, even before COVID, companies were looking for these types of qualities in terms of communication, leadership, project management, organization. Like as nimble and as agile as you could be, we wanted it. Now COVID has just pushed that to the forefront where it's greater than 50-50, Marty. I mean, if no matter what role you may be applying to, you may start off the year working with Microsoft Teams and you will be working with Cisco WebEx by the end of the year. You may be starting off working with, for example, Google Sheets at the beginning of the year, but you're going to transition more into some sort of other project management or CRM software that's brand new because you just needed to adapt. And so what I would tell you is it's almost like, in my opinion, a 70-30 split where your ability to adapt, process change, and then be a champion of change is really leading the forefront of how interviewers are looking at, the next generation of employees. So yes, do you still need to have experience under your belt? Do you still need to have knowledge and, an understanding of how the industry worked? And I'm saying that in the past tense because everything is changing so dramatically.
Sure.
Yes, you do. Is it equally as important that you be able to have that as well as your ability to manage change? No, I would say the change management piece is much more crucial. Christine was talking about this at the beginning, right? Like, when we're thinking
Right.
about trying to find YouTubers that are, quickly trying to interview, modify, edit, and then publish videos for interviews. These things are really taking the forefront. I'm a really big fan of Shark Tank, and if you guys know Mr. Wonderful,
Yeah.
he's one of my role models and mentors. And the thing that really strikes me the most is that when an opportunity presents itself, are you going to be the kind of employee that sits back and waits and says, how do other people, address this? Are they comfortable with this? Let me watch other people do it. Or are you the kind that says, what, let me just jump right in. We'll sink, swim, whatever it takes, fail fast, fail forward. And if you're that kind of person that comes across in an interview that says, yeah, you know what, I don't know what I'm doing 100% of the time, but I know where my heart is and I know what I want to get at the end of the day. So if you're willing to give me the resources, the support, and the time to do it, I think I'll be a great match. You will be surprised at how many interviewers are like, oh, yeah, we want this person.
We all tend to need to learn really, really fast these days and find ways of implementing success.
Excellent. What a great wrap up there, Iqbal. We're going to take another break to do a book deep dive. So, Iqbal, I hope you can stay around. Although I know you're a very busy guy helping other people reach their dreams. So, in the meantime, let's take a moment for Christine's book deep dive.
Why Didn't I Think of That? By Robert Shook catalogs $10 million ideas. The ideas were introduced by entrepreneurs that didn't necessarily know the business or have the background. And the first story is about Gary Dahl. Gary had just quit his job as a copyright editor and was lamenting with friends. Casual conversations amongst the friends got around to pets. And Gary remarked, I don't have to worry about that. My pet rock is doing just fine. In the small group, there were many laughs and they started to joke. It sits and stays forever. It doesn't require much feeding. Gary went home from the restaurant and continued to think about how such a quick, witty reply had generated so much conversation and that maybe he could create something out of this. He wrote a pet rock manual. He realized quickly that a manual amongst many other books may not sell, so he attached an actual pet rock with it. Gary wasn't experienced at these things, but worked with a friend who was an artist to create some great packaging, slimmed down his manual, eventually found a distributor and a way to get out, and born was the pet rock craze. Pet rocks took about $1 to manufacture, were sold at $2, and marked up in retail to $4. They were super popular in 1975, but there were many challenges to overcome. How do you go from a prototype idea to filling orders for thousands? How do you get distribution into different areas? How do you handle cash flow problems when you need to find someone to die cut and pay for them to die cut, and yet you don't have the income yet? These are a lot of the great answers that you can hear and learn from Gary Dahl's experience in creating the pet rock. Next time, we'll deep dive into hula hoops and onions and the lessons learned there.
I love it. I owned a pet rock, so I'm a big fan. He eventually was released back into the wild. Okay.
Yeah, pet rocks exploded on the scene. I mean, he made millions of dollars out of that. It changed his and his wife's lifestyle. There's a lot to that story to be learned from. In fact, it's very often used in MBA programs. And most packaging engineers, Gary Dahl's a hero.
Definitely. I mean, that whole phenomena of the pet rock was amazing because, after all, it was just a rock. But what really made it, you're absolutely right, Christine, was the packaging was superb. It was awesome. And the book, the details of the care and feeding of your pet rock just made it such a treat. It was a book worth reading in itself. The little manual was worth reading over and over again. Did any of you guys own a pet rock?
Not me. My sister owned the pet rock.
Okay.
Yeah, but he went from, a company of one to very, very, very many, very quickly. And that hiring and interviewing was a big part of what he had to go through. And I don't think
it's surprising. One of the things that I hear most often is, as a candidate, whether you're applying for a job or you're trying to sell a product, like, we're always interviewing. right? Like we are always
Right.
in the process of trying to be able to learn more about somebody else, but at the same time, share the best of ourselves and paint ourselves in that light. So I'm going to add that book to my list, Christine. Thank you for that.
Yeah, CJ, do you have any comments on the book?
You know, I wasn't a fan when the Pet Rock came out, and while you can make a quick buck, I don't think he could transition the company into a long-term thing. But I do find it interesting from a hiring standpoint. He probably had to hire a lot of people really fast without yet knowing what true roles they needed to play. And I wonder if Iqbal could talk to that. What do you do in a startup situation when you know the roles are going to be changing or in flux?
You know, it's so interesting you bring that up, CJ, only because, you know, you mentioned like as if startups are the only organizations that are doing this fluid like position, right? Like, oh, we're looking for a director, we're looking for a consultant, or we're looking for, you know, a talent specialist or some sort of specialist with defined roles. I mean, Fortune 500 companies are doing this as well. They are in the midst of a massive transformation. And so there's not really this clear cut direction of what needs to be done. So what I do see is that, you know, the ones that are designing these types of roles, whether they're in HR, operations, legal, compliance, like they understand that there's going to be a certain skill set that's required. And so they're putting those up front. And what they're trying to do is they're putting in job descriptions, which, by the way, are really the first step in where a candidate should really invest their time. Whether it's creating a resume to tailor, to customize it themselves for that job, or to glean information from it. That job description has all the right words and all the right ambitions for what you're going to be doing. But I will tell you that, you know, when a company sets out a new opportunity or even revamps an existing opportunity, what they really want to see are the soft skills. They're going to have an expectation of what your hard skills are. You must have a bachelor's degree in whatever, psychology, engineering, healthcare. But at the same time, they're going to put the right language in there that shows, hey, are you a strong communicator? Are you proficient at Microsoft PowerPoint or Prezio or Visio? You know, how many other database systems are you able to say that I'm not only good at, but I can teach others? Because you're going to need to know the tools in order to modify it for every new project you're going to have added to your plate.
Wow, that's great. Hey, thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciated hearing from you.
Yes.
It's been my pleasure.
Hey,
Thanks so much for having me.
Yes, definitely.
Yes.
Before you leave, you know what I want to do is I want to throw across the board to everyone here one of my favorite questions I ask when I'm interviewing people. So I just like bringing this up just so I can see that worried look on CJ's face. Okay? And so the question is, if money didn't matter and all goods and services were free, okay, so you could do anything and it just didn't matter, what do you think you'd really want to be doing? What would bring you the most joy? So anyone have an answer?
This right here. Thank you for bringing me in for the interview.
That's the correct answer.
Actually, she's not wrong. I mean, it's pretty much across the board. Yeah, like this is for me. Yeah, like, you know, I started my consulting company 2 years ago because I came to a point where I had realized that this was exactly what I want. I want to be able to take my life lessons, the things that I've learned, and help other people advance their career, build a better brand, and create a leadership legacy. Couldn't ask for a better job.
Excellent. Thank you.
Yay.
Thanks so much for having me, everyone.
Thank you so much, Iqbal.
Thank you.
Talk to you soon.
Bye-bye.
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 Take care.
Wow, what a great visit, huh?
Yes. I had to throw in a curveball there at the end. But Christine, you jumped right into it. You had no problem.
My problem is when I know I'm out and out lying to something, I laugh at the end. I'd lose the interview at the end. So when I look at this whole thing, in the beginning, when I knew Iqbal was going to be here and we were going to talk to him about this, I thought to myself, as an interviewer or an interviewee, the option of an in-person interview versus a virtual online, what would I like? And I thought to myself that as an interviewer, I think I like the idea of online interviewing because it's efficient. I'm able to get through one person after another. I thought that that's the direction I wanted to go in. As an interviewee,
I said wholeheartedly, yes, without a doubt, I want to be there in person. I want to see the person. I want to be able to see their whole, all the movements of their body. I want to see their inflections. I want to see the facility, everything. But the more talking to Iqbal, I really think I'm going to go back on the first side, even as an interviewer. I think I'm going to lean more towards I want to interview still face to face again. Maybe it's a combination of spending so much time away from people that I want to be and talk to people, but also I think you get so much insight and I have a better opportunity to make them feel comfortable and getting the right answers out of them.
Okay, talking about making people feel comfortable. I've been in some interviews where the person has done just the opposite to see how I would squirm or not squirm.
Sure.
There was one person that was interviewing me, this was years back, and they just kind of started talking like this and started doing paperwork while they're talking, and they rambled on something about their Aunt Mildred, and they talked for 30 minutes. And then I realized, okay, they wanted to know if I had power to control the conversation and bring that to an end.
Interesting.
And I was sitting there thinking, maybe he needs me to be polite. So either way, it's a game sometimes, and you don't know which part of the game to play. Do I tactfully cut him off and say, listen, I don't have time for this meandering, let's get to the point? Or do you say, well, you know, I'm glad that you have an aunt that you can care for?
Sure.
You know, I think there's three things here.
Go ahead, Christine, please.
Well, I grew up thinking, you know, when you're interviewing, you want the job, and that's actually not true. Sometimes this interviewee and interviewer, it is to figure out if that is the right space for you. So if it's a win or a fail, the goal is to figure out what the matchup is. For me, Iqbal kind of mentioned this, and you've mentioned it, it's the culture. I think the culture of a place and the space that you're working in, we can all relearn, or we need to.
Yes.
But
sorry, go ahead. Finish, please finish.
Well, we can all relearn or get stronger in things, but we need to see if we fit in the culture. Some cultures are fast paced. Some you need to be a little bit more certain, more of a sure stepping person. You know, so I think figuring out the culture of a place, and going back to your joke, Marty, about the FBI, I think a good way to get on the side or see if you can get into the culture, there's an FBI masterclass where they talk about, you know, using the small signs that you give off and other people give off to figure out how well you match up.
Interesting.
Okay, I think we should interview Marty right now. Let's see how you do, Marty, on the spot.
I don't know. I'm not going to go hit my wife with a chair if that's what you're going at.
Oh.
All right. So overall, I think this was one of our best interviews. I really like this. I got an awful lot out of Iqbal. Some really important things, and the biggest thing for me was that adaptability, showing that if I'm interviewing somewhere, is showing those people there that I am the change leader. I am there going to grow with the company and expand. I always tell people that I tell them concentrate on shine, sharpen, and share. In other words, I can shine in my abilities. That's only one part of it. All the things that I can do, I shine in those types of things. Sharpen, in other words, shows them all the time that I'm going out of my way to learn new skills and to grow. And then share is I'm not afraid to share those things with other people. And I think in that regards, that shine, sharpen, and share makes you a great team leader and shows that you're going to be somebody going to be there for the long run. What about you guys? What did you get out of the entire show today?
I'm going to do a step better here. I'm going to mention, since you did your...
A step better or a step different?
No, you had 3 S words. I'm going to go with 4 words.
Yes. Okay.
So I'm going to talk about how you can be safe in an interview situation. So S is for show. What you want to show is the things that you excel at. A is for action, the actions that you've taken to be successful. F is the fun factor. You have to let them know that you can fit into the culture and that you're a good time and that you can be a part of things. And then the E, believe it or not, is a little different from the fun factor. It's entertain. every time you do a sales presentation, every time you do a training session or anything that requires getting information across, finding an entertaining way to do it really makes a big difference as far as how people receive your information and how long they hold on to it. So I'm a firm believer in being safe in the interview.
Nice. What about you, Christine?
I think those are great, guys. I got a lot from those. Lots of things to remember. And I particularly loved Iqbal's comment about job description, that the job description is a great place to glean information and to tailor and to prepare yourself for it as well. So I love the idea of really concentrating on a job description.
Yeah, that's great.
Excellent. All right. Well, then, unless you guys have something else you want to add, I'm going to say see you later. See you next week. It's been a great time today. I've got lots of notes. I've got to go and reorganize these right now. All right. Take care.
See you, everybody.
Bye.